Vegetables won't make you gay. TV will. Hey, I'm AetherionArt, and I'm back with part 2 of this eye tutorial. We're going to be focusing purely on the color. Alright, so I might just speed through the part where I draw the eyes. I'm gonna draw 3 different eyes with 3 different primary colors, so I can show you how similarly you would handle these, and I suppose how different. Why don't I just skip right ahead to drawing the eyes first. You can go ahead and check out the previous video to this for the line art, the manga sort of look, or fucking whatever, right? Okay, so let's get right into this. Yeah, okay, we're back. I fumbled around a little bit there because I'm going to be taking a bit of a different approach for this one versus the one that I did for just the black and white style. Now, what's necessary to note here, or what I should mention, I have a grayed out background. I don't always do this, but it's a good strategy not only to protect your eyes when you're looking at a screen too long, but it also helps to distinguish and differentiate the colors that I'm going to be using here, because, you know, I'll be coloring in the whites of the eyes. That won't be entirely white. So I should also explain, and you may have noticed in the other videos, that I don't use a completely black color to outline anything. You see there? It's kind of a a midnight black or something. It's just above like the like, it's on the cusp of black in a way. It has enough color that I can manipulate later, you know? And this plays a huge factor in just the overall tone and coolness, like actual, like, you know, temperature as in the color of how it corresponds with the rest of what's contained within it. And that gives it a whole lot of context. So you can look at a lot of different line art and see that some people have somewhat of a rosy, kind of offish black. They have somewhat of a, maybe it's just straight up kind of like a darker muted brown. Something that holds the form of what's in there, the color that is, but doesn't overwhelm it so much. Because when you're using straight black, then there's kind of, there's not a lot of room to play with. You're at the ultimate, like, that's where pure contrast is. So you can't, there's no room to play when it's that extreme. But without further ado, why don't I show let me show exactly how I put together these the folders for coloring the eyes. Now, I make one folder and then I give it about 3 basic layers here. So I do 2 layers, a folder, clip that, and then put another folder inside of that one. And we'll see why I did this in a second. There's a lot of different ways to color eyes, especially if they're jaundiced or whatever the hell. But I'm gonna go for what I usually use, and it's kind of like, what is it, cyan or a kayak? I don't know. I forgot how you pronounce that blue. But I go all the way to the tippy top just before it hits white. I'm always keeping it just before it hits anything, because I need to be able to use the hue and saturation to, you know, scamuffle it in case I fuck it up. So let's see here. There's a couple of ways I could do this, but I think I'll be safe with that without having to use the lasso tool. Sometimes I use that in these instances, but I think, if we're lucky, I'll be able to get the paint bucket tool to detect the difference between these 3 different colors here. So, alright. Where is it? There you go. Okay, good. There's a bit of a, oh boy, there's a bit of a fucking fault line right there I can just touch up real quick. And it usually helps when I use the lasso tool. The lasso tool is incredibly loose, so you have to have pitch perfect dexterity to deal with that. So, okay, let me just focus on just this one eye first, and I'll get to the other ones now. Okay, so you have your eye, right? Now, next part we're going to be dealing with is the one right above it, which is going to be the color of the iris. Now, I said I was going to be dealing with like these in primary, so, or I guess in sort of like flesh tone primary colors, I suppose. So why don't I start off with like blue, and I'm going to make this a very, very light, heavily saturated light blue right here. Let's put that on the inside on both sides right there. See? Right there. That is piercing. Now, the reason I have this masking layer up here and why it's in a folder is because there's a lot of ways you can manipulate this while it's in there. So, this masking layer is specifically for the shading of the iris itself, which is why it's above it. This is usually where I come in and I use the lasso tool, and I'll come down, well, let's see, around here, and then pitch it towards way more blue. And if I don't get this right on the first try, that'll be fine. Let's see here. Well, let me, yeah, I think that'll be good. And I do the old boomerang technique like I taught before, and there you go. You have some mighty fine, incredibly sharp contrast between these two worlds right here. They're both blues, but this part of the iris leans way more towards right over here where it's in the warmer areas where you're coming towards green, and the shade is darker and leans more towards the cooler areas. So that's what you call color contrast, or whatever the hell it is in color theory or something. Now, for the next layer inside of it, because we're just going to be dealing with the inside of the iris, so the next layer is going to be kind of filling in some of the other details. And this one I'll keep pretty simple. There's a lot of ways to make it insanely, like, pearly looking marble. Like, I like to keep everything relatively simple. While I just keep I'll keep that streak for the most part. Now, I was mentioning before, just briefly in the last one, that the pupil, or the pupil can be shaded in completely black, or rather, not completely black, well, the same color as whatever line that you're, whatever color that the lines are. But typically, in certain other cases, it's a little more interesting whenever you make it somewhat the same, like, color family as what you have going on here. So I'm gonna have this one as like a darker blue, but definitely less saturated or so, and we'll see what that looks like. Yeah, right there. Yeah, you see, this is the kind of thing that helps to sort of draw attention, no pun intended, motherfucker, draw attention to the various ways that light can affect something like an eyeball, because it's so, it's an ocean, it's liquidy, it's like, it's kaleidoscopic, you know? And I have essentially three different of the same sort of color family in here. One being very bright, super saturated. The other one being a little less saturated, but definitely on the cooler and darker side. And this one is probably the least saturated. As you can see, it's sort of in the middle, and the darkest of them all. And in a way, if I go here, it doesn't even have to be the darker of the three. It can also be fairly lighter and still kind of work. And it really depends on the circumstances, because like, you know how, like, how iridescent the pupils of other animals can be? You can sort of do that same sort of, like, you can play with that with people eyes too. Let me make this a bit more green. Like, see right there. If it's like, it's not accurate, but it is fascinating to look at the very least. And I think at the end here, I'll use my OC Space Girl's eyes as an example, because I decided to take sort of the color theory of what the iris and the pupil sort of situation is supposed to be to a whole other facet. But now that we have that part out of the way, and we'll just keep it at that standard, I want to go way back down here, right here where we have the eye color, the eyeball color, the sclera, and I want to add another layer, put a masking layer over that. Now, I'm going to get some reference of the eyeball color itself, because it does sort of affect it. It's subtle, but it's not completely white, so you can always kind of sort of tell, especially when it's against skin. I'll make that again darker, muted, and a bit more on the blue side. So I'm gonna make these shadows a lot cooler, essentially. And you get the lasso tool in there, and that's effectively how you would shade the top of the eyeball, more or less. I'll make it a little bit like, give it some more leeway right there. Yeah, that's better. Oh, I'll make it lighter too. See, this is why I keep everything in color of some kind, so that I can, like, play around with it later on. Let me do the same to this old guy right here. Yeah, I think that's fine. Now, this is the basic sort of like palette here, but this is an interesting circumstance because this plays back into what I was saying before about how the pupil is sunken inwards, like a satellite dish sort of situation. The shading on the sclera above the eye is up here, whereas the shading on the iris is way the fuck down here. Now, again, it keeps things looking really interesting and it brings out the iris, but the realism behind that is the fact that they're not on the same plane, like in the anatomy of the eye. And like I said, go ahead and check out the video prior to this, part 1 of this, for a more or less clearer explanation of that. But because it's sunken inwards, light will be it'll be affected by light a little bit differently. Now to put essentially the cherry on top, and there's seemingly about 5 layers here in total for this entire eye, if you're not counting like the line art and everything. But there's one more little thing that I want to get in here, or maybe even 2. Now let's see. If I go above the line art layer, which is what I usually do, this is where I get to use the actual, like, pure white here, because I'm going to be dealing with the highlight. Now, before I was kind of drawing it in with the outline, which you can do. You can put an outline around the eye and then fill it in with the highlight. But in this one, I'm just going to do what most people do, and I'll just, let's see here. I'll put the little highlighted area and do that. And if you want it to give it a little bit of extra glimmer, extra sparkle, you add another one that's sort of on the inside, like right there. See? There you go. There you go. That's your basic manga, like, anime looking like eye or whatever. Or really, this is more about the shading than just whatever kind of genre it happens to look like. But that's more or less what you do with that. So you have the highlight layer and then 5 other layers composing the entire eye. So more or less, a lot more goes into this than just the basic sort of like compository of like having to shade it from like black and white or whatever, which I still have up here, by the way. Why don't I bring those out? Yeah, right here. Now, I was saying before that you could easily just like color have it like this and just color it in and it'll be just fine. As in, like, doing something like, oh boy, that's not right there, like that. You see that, like, from a distance or whatever, that's like entirely fine. It doesn't even matter. And because the shading's so dark, I would even just like lighten this up a little bit, give it a little less saturation or whatever. You get the idea. So that even in and of itself can work out pretty well. And let's see here. To get back to the other guy, let me see. That was the sketch layer. The other thing I wanted to show, let me get rid of these highlights, is also where was I? That's the line. Son of a bitch. Was also what you can do as some kind of partial highlight, or rather, what would you call it? Probably like a sub-highlight inside of the eye. And this one I can't get right off the bat. I have to sort of test it out. But this is like, and I don't know what you would really call this, but I've seen it in a lot of different styles, and I wanted to bring it to the jury's attention here. Yeah, right there. You see how that kind of gives somewhat of like a backlighting to everything? It's I really don't know what to call it. It's just like, sometimes you add like a dark purple inside of there and it just happens to work. And, well, I mean, fuck, I guess there you have it. But, it's, sometimes you can balance that out with some of the, like, highlights right there or whatever. But, I guess another thing, disregarding that for a second here, another thing, or reason why I put everything into a, like a masking folder is so that when it comes to this bad boy, if you really want it to get more in depth, you could take some of the color from here, go to your gradient, or even just, if you don't have a gradient, most programs have like the spray paint tool. So if you take that and then just do a little bit of this or whatever, and not too much, you don't want to go too heavy on it because it's just you're dealing with subtle colors. You just put a little bit of like rim lighting right up there and there you go. It's kind of, you know, presto. It looks a hell of a lot shinier or whatever, like on the inside. It's all about what goes on in the inside of the iris if you really want to like gather a lot of attention there. That's part of the dogma of that style or whatever. And even because of that, you can add a little more highlight to it. Let me see here. Yeah, see, like that, you can have it just like in the center or whatever. It all comes together pretty well. So let me skip ahead to the next couple of eyes with the various colors to show you how to deal with that little. Oh god damn it! Okay, let me just God. So yeah, you see what's going on here. I used a color that was a little bit too dark for the line art. Never keep it that way. You see how the values between these two are sort of like at its wit's ends, where it's almost like the color's almost darker than the line art? Never let that happen. Unless, of course, the line art is supposed to make whatever you're surrounding the thing by look like it's glowing or whatever, that's like that much, like it's lighter. The point is, don't let them clash like this. This is sort of like diabolical. This is absolutely wrong. What you would want to do, and it's so subtle, if you can just go into your luminosity, like right there. See, it's a notch between like right and wrong with that one. So okay, yeah, without interruption, let me go back to this. Okay, so now here are the three other sets pretty much completed. Let me just explain my methodology here, especially with the these other two sets. Now you have this like rosy sort of dark brown eye right here, and it all kind of leads more towards red than just straight up brown. This is again just kind of a reflex of my style. I think the more colorful tint that you add, that yields more towards more of an unrealistic sort of eye color, which would be, or I guess not a common eye color for people, would be like, you know, straight up like kind of like rosy red. There's like hints of it within there, right? And for the commonly seen sort of like eye type for anime, for like, you know, like the yellow eye, I decided to go with the color palette that's basically kind of like how gold works. You see, you have the insanely like light yellow right here, and then you have like the like dark brown-ish sort of yellow right here. It's like a watered down green orange or some shit. Like that's it's again, it's following the principles of like giving like contrast through like light and like sort of like, you know, the lighting being like cool or warm, dealing with color palettes that kind of complement one another if they're in the same sort of color family. But speaking of like redder eyes, why don't I just go ahead and sort of demonstrate what I usually do with like more red looking eyes or whatever. Let me see here. Now if I add a little more saturation to this part right there, in fact, you can almost keep it more or less like a like this can still be almost classified like an eye that's like brown, but the lighting is just so strong or whatever that it gives off more of a like a reddish hue right there. It's almost insanely red, but you know, because of the kind of color action that's going on here, it's composite in the way that you think about the overall eye color becomes like brown, you know, because the other ones aren't exactly yielding towards red as much. Now, if you wanted to make it straight up red, give it way more saturation, give it way more lighting like that, and there you have it. You really don't have to change anything else within that part. Heck, let's see here. That's like you still get the right amount of contrast, you still get a right amount of like piercing lighting. That's exactly what you want to well, at least what I usually like to get out of these is just a lot of piercing lighting. You can even, let me see here. Let me try to test this out before I try to explain it like this is something you can actually do. Now, like I was saying before, with like making like the pupil sort of like lighter than even the shading is, this one, doing it like this kind of just, I don't know, to me it seems like it's an interesting iridescent sort of thing to do. Maybe even circumstantial to whatever kind of like lighting situation is going on. And speaking of which, there's also different sort of like shaded dynamics here as well, where it doesn't have to just be way up here. It can definitely be down here with the rest of the other shading inside of the iris right there. But you almost never want them to be exactly at the same plane, because then it just looks sort of plain. Like you see that it almost like it works, but it's just not nearly as interesting as whenever it's seemingly broken up like that. See, it kind of gives you an idea of like there's like ridges or some shit there. Now this works really well, especially if you have like if the lighting is sort of like not really dimmer, but say there's like it's being obstructed by like bangs or a hat, or maybe the environment, they're standing under something. That helps a lot too. You can even just do the entire thing. Fuck it, just the whole thing is just completely blacked out, and you can still have the highlights in there, and you can still even have this little part right here where, you know, the light's still piercing, because you can, I don't know, it's an artistic sort of choice to just have it do such a thing. So okay, so I give this yield that to the middle. That one's completely shaded, that one's like partially. So again, the inside more or less stays the same, but you know, the part of the sclera, the shading on that can vary very dramatically, completely dramatically. It's fair game. It's all just up to whatever you feel like in the moment, or whatever like fits the best. Now, actually, when I give this a little bit of the same sort of like rim lighting up top that I did the other one, like that, and another one for the other guy up here. Oh, I don't even have to make a masking there. Almost forgot it. Yeah. So there you have that for the most part. Now, for the lastly, I want to just bring in my little thing of that. What I decided to do as a sort of homage to how much I fucking know about lighting and coloring. Here's what I did with my OC Space Girl's eyes. So why don't I sketch that out real quick, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, now we're staring into the abyss. So I'm gonna go through the regular procedure right here, like I did before. I'm going to add the oh boy, let me this lasso tool's kind of tricky sometimes. It's good practice. It's good practice. Okay, got it. Got it. First try. First fucking try. Got it. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. Okay, let me get rid of some of the fucking strays over here. Okay, so I got the going through the regular procedure, the typical thing. Here's where things get a wee bit strange, because as for the other ones, I had the pupil already lined out and ready to go, but I'm just gonna keep this one entirely blank right here. And let me see, for the inside, that's where I'm going to add her signature crazy shit. Here's what I like to do. I'm going to use the lasso tool again, and let me go all the way back around here so it gets all of that. I think that should be good. There we go, more or less. Ooh, yeah, kind of, whatever. Get a little more right there, yeah. So I went in and basically did, well, this is supposed to indicate that this is like the perimeter of the eye, or at least within it. And this is where I place the pupil, right around there, or something like that. And that's essentially the basics of what this eye even looks like. Now, to add the shading, let's go back to a familiar place with this. Just use sort of a darker gray or something right there. Well, it's a bit too dark. I don't like that. I don't like that entirely too much. I'm not married to it. Could have a lot to do with the background looking the way it does right now, but also to note, the shading on the eye, the white part of the eye, doesn't have to be completely gray either, or at least close to super gray. This can also be kind of like a light blue or whatever. It says a lot about the environment. It always does. It always does. The lighter and more saturated the shading is, the seemingly more outside and into the wide open during like a beautiful, blissful afternoon it looks like. So now to get in with the more complex shading on the inside of the eyes here. Now this is where I generate a lot of contrast, a lot of sharper, darker blues or so. Get the boomerang in there. And wow. Actually, a little more. It's always trial and error. Wow, yeah, I like that a little bit better. Bring it down a little more too. So remember, the iris on the inside is like a little satellite dish, like I keep saying. It's very important that you think of it that way. Okay. And not to leave this other part alone, this is where I add a masking layer within the masking layer. We're finally getting into the big leagues. And I guess I'd keep it at that same ratio and then do this. It's not like I draw this character a lot or anything, and I should just know or have a color palette right at the handy. There we go. Something. Actually, I make it a little bit lighter than that, don't I? For any of you really familiar with it, I make it a little bit lighter than that. Way more saturated or so. Yeah, something like that. And let me come up here, and because I already outlined them, I can pretty much have the liability to just go like, let me see here. Ah, yeah. Let me put it above the masking layer, else it won't fucking register. Yeah, there we go. There we go. And since it's above everything else, I could even add a little bit more here. Or heck, even go for broke and add a little bit of that action there too. Or why don't I just put that there? Like the little Evangelion sparkles, or fucking Kill I Kill sparkles, or fucking I like Gydax and Trigger. That's my brand of fucking style, sort of thing. Yeah. So let me get this to a, yeah, it's definitely a more of a pinker fig right there. Yeah. So okay. So that's essentially how I deal with that sort of situation, with really going AWOL with how I approach sort of like shading the eyes and the eye color sort of thing. It's very unique what I've done, what I created here. I like it a lot because it's just, again, it's interesting, it's different, it's cool, it's got interesting shit going on all over the place. So, that's pretty much it. Let me get the little family photo together. That was pretty much it. That's about all I know about coloring eyes. Again, a lot of this stuff may be revisited later. We'll see. I don't know. Especially things with like hands and other kind of things, or like things I've already covered. I can probably cover again because I'll know a little bit more about the stuff, and I'll be able to do a heck of a lot more with that information later on. If I can articulate myself better there, but yeah. So that's it. Go ahead and check out a lot of the other stuff that I have out, which is just, I don't know, 3 other like actual tutorials. More to come. It's been suggested that I do something along the lines of about proportions and anatomy and all that, especially in the more Studio Triggerish style, which I'm pretty much locked into. So I may or may not tackle that next time, but that's definitely gonna be that's gonna be on the books. I'm not sure which thing about it I'll tackle, because there's a lot that goes into it, but I'll for sure get to it in the next video. But I don't think it'll be the definitive final one. But and yeah, so for any other suggestions, go ahead and just put it in the comments or whatever. I'll read them probably. Put them anywhere you want that I'll be able to see it. But it'll be easier to tell if it's on YouTube or whatever. And check out the description that has all the other links to Twitter, Newgrounds, and you can see all the other work that I've done with this sort of talent here. So, you know, do with that what you may. Fucking close the tab.